Good afternoon, Joey on the Caribbean Weather Dude. 21st of September, the first day of fall. Feeling like fall out there. Certainly looking like it a little bit more. We do have some warmer days for BC next week, but it's going to be short-lived, right? So we'll explain why and how that surprising couple of days of warmth is coming to us. But we have some deviations in the forecast, which could be bringing even more precipitation to BC coast. So on Monday, I made a video saying we got some storms coming to the BC coast and atmospheric river potential. Looks like that's happening. In fact, took Weather Network 4 days to catch up, but they made a video yesterday saying the same thing. In fact, now we see an unlikely scenario playing out where the high that's protecting a lot of the BC coast from these incoming storms may be breaking down. That may allow for some very powerful storms to make their way towards BC next week. So we are watching now with all eyes on this kind of thing. Who is going to get the heavy precipitation totals? Now, this happens between now and the end of the month. These aren't exact numbers, okay? So we don't watch my videos and think to yourself, well, okay, 530.1 millimeters is going to fall in this exact location. No, but this gives us a good idea. And we've been watching how these predictions have kind of moved around a little bit, but now they're starting to settle into a location that's like, well, if you're near Kitimat, you're near Ocean Falls, you're probably going to see some bad news. Let's go. There it is. This is bad news. My God.
Falling out right now.
Anything could happen. Get on! Wow. I'll watch the video later. They dry mopping this. As has been the case lately, these forecast videos are brought to you by Butterfly Effect Communications. They are launching a new product on October the 1st called CanadianTraining.ca is the website. It's training for you, your business, and your team about mental well-being and public-facing roles, public relations superpower, becoming a broadcaster, how to use video and audio to reach your audience and having more effect with your messaging, speaking, and media, and things like that. So you can join their newsletter list and get exclusive insider previews and early bird pricing. Learn more about how to be in public relations roles. CanadianTraining.ca. You got our first rainfall warnings going on the coast. If you're in Bella Coola area today, you could be seeing 100 to 120 millimeters of rain there the next 24 hours, more or less, between now through Sunday morning. Okay, higher rainfall totals could actually come to some places that currently aren't getting warning criteria, but they may yet. 50 to 70 millimeters coming to Bella Coola. So look out for you guys there between now and Sunday morning. And we do have, if you go a little further north up to our area where we've had those big fires in Tweedsmuir there, Smithers area, you could be in this for 40 millimeters of rain coming, okay, today and tonight. However, another system will approach Monday. There's uncertainty regarding the location of the highest rainfall totals. The current models suggest that Stewart, Kitimat, possibly Prince Rupert could meet rainfall warning criteria. I would expect so. I mean, it's really looking like that. We do have some things still burning out there. We do have some smoke advisories, air quality advisories up in the Northwest Territories. Blows my mind. But that's still going on, okay? We still have fog going on up Nunavut, far Nunavut coast, Chesterfield Inlet, places like that. Northern Ontario getting a rainfall warning, 50 millimeters still falling there. Head up over into Quebec. We got a wind warning heading up there, 90 kilometers an hour in the very north tip. And then we also have frost advisories on the west coast of Newfoundland. So, this is one of my favorite maps. That's the 500 millibar. That's basically the bottom end of the jet stream. Where is our weather coming from? It looks like, bam, by Tuesday, we could be taking it pretty hard in the chin in British Columbia. And the way this storm is going to pound in next after that, we could be seeing some considerable rainfall totals. We could be seeing atmospheric river coming down in the lower mainland even. We don't have exact specifics yet, but we know the fire hose is coming to BC. I mean, I'll explain why right now. So we do have generally this high pressure that lives off the coast. It's been kind of protecting us right now. Right now, it's steering that rainfall further north up towards maybe the Alaska Panhandle and whatnot. So here's where that high pressure is living. And you're going to watch this week, that high pressure is going to get broken down for whatever reason and squished out. Something that drives me a little bit crazy is I post on Interior Weather and Wilderness Watchers. We got 38,000 people there, and that's my project. I post there this map yesterday. Of course, it was a different map than this, but people, how is anyone supposed to read this, they say. Well, I put 2 paragraphs at the top. Read the paragraphs. Read what I wrote. It's describing what's on the map, people. So many people, there's like 15,000 people who've joined the group in the last number of months. And I get it. Some of this stuff is new to you, but you look at people who've been in the group for 5 years or 10 years, they used to think the same thing when they'd see these maps. But slowly they've been paying attention to what I've been saying over years, and they're like, oh, well, the H means high pressure to 1022 millibars. That's very high. Okay, 1027, very high pressure out there in the coast. It will be very low pressure, though, coming in the BC interior. We see the blue is snowfall, right? This is today, and the green is rainfall. The higher colors are in the oranges and reds and things like that, the yellows, right? So here's storm 1. Bam. That takes us through the first 2 days. A little bit of a break, quick break, but the next one starts approaching quickly. Very low. That's like hurricane strength low. Okay, the last hurricane that hit down in Louisiana there a week or two ago, it was something like 972, 970, something like that when it came through. So we're talking hurricane strength low. This is a low. It's a mid-latitude cyclone. That's another thing that sometimes drives me crazy is people have to understand I'm not just making stuff up or trying to use language that scares you. So when I say a cyclone is approaching the BC coast, a mid-latitude cyclone, we no longer consider a tornado a cyclone. That's when they said the Regina cyclone. That is 100 years ago, we might have used that word. Woody Guthrie might have used that word in Okemos, Oklahoma, when he said a cyclone hit Okemos back in 1912 or whatever he said it was. Okay, well, that's what they use for, but we don't use the word cyclone anymore. And when we're saying cyclone, we're not meaning a hurricane. We're meaning a mid-latitude cyclone. It's a very specific thing. Well, let's talk about what a mid-latitude cyclone is, and we'll kind of revisit this again just so people who are new get an idea. But the mid-latitude cyclone, it's feeding off the warm, moist air that's coming up from the south. There's a lot of it still out in the ocean, and it's drawing in very cold air from the north, and the two of them together are forming. It's a little bit different than a hurricane. A hurricane doesn't have those two competing things. It's feeding off the ocean temperature almost completely. But this one's different. This is a mid-latitude cyclone. That's what you get in these upper regions once you get into the mid-latitudes on planet Earth, right? So here's cyclone number 2, 979, stalling out there, long tail of precipitation. That means that the way it's stalled there means that it's going to be delivering rain to consistent locations and snow to consistent locations again and again and again. So sitting there for Tuesday, still on Wednesday, hasn't moved much, although it's weakening, so it stalls out. Bring in, bam, precipitation. Even southern BC getting some precipitation next week. So that's good for you. And then, bam, next storm comes in, very powerful one. It really tightens up by Thursday and slams into the BC coast on Friday, conceivably. I mean, this could, these could be changed in this. It could happen on Saturday. It could happen on Thursday where it actually slams in. This is what we're watching this week. We're watching to see how this unfolds and what's going to happen here. But so far, indications are we got snow coming to the BC mountains. We got rain coming to the BC mountains. It's going to be a gooder. Okay, it's going to be a gooders. We got 1, 2, and 3 storms coming out. And what's significant, and just the other day, we'll rewind this for a minute here and we'll come back to more present times. Okay, there's that big high pressure sitting there. Just the other day, Mark Ingalls and I were talking about this in the meteorological report, and he's assuring me, because he's a meteorologist, and he's generally right. I didn't disagree with them because I said, well, yeah, I know, that makes sense. He said, well, that high pressure is pretty well established right now. It's going to stay there for a while. That's going to keep the track of most storms heading up to the Alaska Panhandle. Sure, that's true. Well, what happens if both models suddenly say that high actually does break down and squish out and move off? There it goes, right? So the unlikely thing that we thought probably wouldn't happen may actually deliver a stronger storm into BC south next week, right? Maybe even a couple of them. So we're watching back-to-back-to-back storms. How does this play out before that high pressure tries to reestablish itself, if it can? Doesn't seem like it will. Could be even a 4th storm coming. So that's a ways out. Now we're looking at the end of the month, and maybe even a more powerful one yet by then. So it could be 4 storms. It could be 5 or 6. We don't know, right? We don't know yet. But we know that this one's happening right now. It's hitting the BC coast right now. Absolutely. All these, you look at how tight the gradient is on these. It's kind of like if you look at a topographical map and you see that the isobars are very close together, you say, well, that's very steep. Well, on a wind field map, steep means fast, and the wind is going to follow those contours, and the tighter those gradients are, the faster that wind is going to be moving. So if that's the case, if this plays out more or less how both models seem to think it's going to play out more or less this way, right? We just looked at the GFS modeling. Here we're looking at an ECMWF one. We could look at the GFS on here, but it'll basically show us what we just saw on that other map, right? So we see from the South China Sea up past Japan, far, far north of Hawaii, one long constant string of moisture that's just being available to pull. And we got storms that are forming more or less off the Aleutian Islands where they like to form. This is a common setup. But it's not a setup. It seems early for me to see this strength of setup. I think it's very telling for what kind of winter we're going to have, how many very large precipitous storms we're going to see. And we'll just look at even snowfall. If this scenario plays out, that could even bring as much as, maybe a meter of snow in some of these higher mountains. Of course, these are the big mountains, Mount Waddington and places. They're very, very tall mountains. Some of the, Mount Waddington's like 14,000 feet, right? So it's going to take more snow. It's colder up there, and it's sticking right out into the clouds saying, hey, I'm here, come get me. And the clouds go right to it. Like, they're attracted to it. But up and down the BC coast mountains, looking at some really large snowfall totals possible. And if you go north of Prince George, I mean, this is all going to change. So don't look at this and be like, oh, well, this is exactly how it's going to play out. But no, we keep seeing an evolution in the forecasting, and we see that with big time precipitation totals. So we could have places that see 3, 4, 500 millimeters of rain on the BC coast. We could see places that see 20, 30, 40, 50 centimeters, even 100 centimeters of snow on the BC coast. Of course, if you're up in Alaska, you're going to be seeing places that get absolutely pummeled by this, right? So, it's the start of fall. And we just look out across that Pacific Ocean and we see, here's that conveyor belt, that big high that's helping steer everything right towards us, right? And we have storm after storm after storm forming. This one looking pretty awesome out there, right? A lot of moisture, a lot of warm moisture for this guy to pull in. Well, how much warm moisture? Well, we'll give you an example here how a mid-latitude cyclone works. So you can deduce that this is warm air and it's carrying a lot of moisture because warm air carries more moisture. We know that. We know that this dry slot coming in, this is probably cold and dry air, right? Well, we'll just look at temperature here and we'll see that for ourselves. See how the warm air is cycling up into the center of the storm and how cooler air, it's drawing from places like Russia, Siberia there. It's drawing colder air into the middle of this storm, right? So that's just an example of one storm coming this week. The big forecast surprise I think that's coming is that this cyclone is moving. What a cyclone do? So it's pulling warmer air up along this, and it's going to come into the BC interior. So we're actually going to get a couple days here where some temperatures of 25 to 30 can be found in the BC interior, places like Kelowna, Kamloops, even Williams Lake may be seeing high 20s and stuff like that. So we got a couple warm days. That'll be really nice and welcome. Don't get used to it because by the time the storms start to slam in, we're going to be drawing cold air from the north, right? So we'll just rewind here for a second. We're just going to play this out a little bit and have a look at what's going on. So that 975, bringing very, very, very strong winds. See those tight gradients, like I was just saying before? Those are tight wind fields. So we're going to be seeing winds in there 100 kilometers an hour or more up in the Aleutian Islands. Well, some of the wind projections later this week when some of these storms start hitting that you could be seeing off the BC coast could be some significant, could be some steady 80, 90, 100s, and could be even gusts of 160 so far. It's looking like it in the models, but well, that's looking far out. So we're not gonna guess specifically, but we're gonna say, yeah, it's gonna be some pretty powerful winds coming with this storm to the BC coast. Expect that, and you can see how it's got all that moisture. It's drawn in all the way from Japan, coming across. Bam, hitting the BC coast. So the next storm forming, and there it goes into the BC interior, coast interior. Even this week, even southern British Columbia is going to be seeing some precipitation, it looks like. Even if the tracking of later next week's storm is different, I still think that we're going to see fairly widespread. Then there's your telltale atmospheric river. Look how low that central low pressure is. 973, tight gradient on the wind bands, on the wind fields here. How tight is this? Well, we'll look at the next storm after this and take some guesses. But here's when we start to see that high pressure already breaking down, right? So that's slamming right through Haida Gwaii, slamming up into Kitimat. Terrace going to be seeing some precipitation. The mountains up there seeing some precipitation. This low stalling, it can't move. The fire hose is just sort of stuck more or less somewhere on the BC coast or Alaska Panhandle. More and more looking like we know where it's going to be. And it's going to be where I basically said last forecast video. I mean, I was lucky in saying that maybe the solutions even back then looked like, hey, we're going to see maybe by Ocean Falls and Kitimat and places like that, some significant rainfall totals coming this next week. Well, here we go. We got exactly that, right? So we got a pretty good idea that forecast is looking more and more confident. So as that continues on for 1, 2, 3 days, and we got steady rainfall just continuously working its way in the backside of this, same thing though. We still got lots of warm air here, and we got lots of cool air at the top, and bam, it's going to start forming a next low. That next low starting maybe Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday out there, starting to form out there in the Pacific Ocean. And now this one doesn't have and both models seem to agree on this high pressure breaking down. We have a pretty good feeling there's going to be a pretty strong solid storm form again next week, number 3, and number 3 will not have that high pressure block whatsoever to stop it. So it's going to be happy to move where it wants to move when it gets the chance to do so. So we're going to fast forward now to Thursday morning. And again, now we have that storm 975 low very low central pressure, very large area of low, and it's got moisture all the way across from Japan, and we have very strong wind fields out there, very strong wind fields coming to the BC coast. Well, how much stronger can they get? Let's fast forward a little bit and see. That's a strong cyclone out there off the BC coast, 109 kilometer an hour possible. Again, these things can change, or the exact locations could change. Maybe a little less wind, maybe a little more. But, we're looking out, and we got a pretty good idea. Both models seem to think a very strong low, 960, a hurricane strength low. And if this happens the way we're thinking, on the backside of this low, we're going to see winds at 160 kilometers an hour, 150 kilometers an hour, maybe 170 gusts. We're going to see some very, very strong winds form up in behind on this backside of this storm, right? We're concerned for our friends in Haida Gwaii that you may be getting a very strong, powerful storm next week that maybe, like I said in a video before, it could blow your trees over to Kitimat or somewhere. You could find your trees in Terrace. I don't know. That kind of wind field. But, I don't think the winds that we've seen prior to this in the modeling were anything too crazy or unusual for Haida Gwaii. This one may be next level, and it may be you may be getting hit right on the chin. So we are watching this story over the next week to see how this happens. And if it does, it's going to be bringing some very high precipitation, almost the same way that fire hose has been aimed at the Kitimat area, more or less. It could find a new place on the coast for this one to blow its water at. And it could be that there's another one right after this. So we're coming into a pattern now, an active storm pattern, where they're seeing BC coast taking storms on the chin, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe more. This is what we're going to be watching for the next week. This is what we're going to try to get to the bottom of, to see exactly how this will play out. That's why you are here following Joey Only Caribbean Weather Dude YouTube channel. So, to me, at this time of year, we're in the second half of September. It's getting later. But to me, those storms looking pretty strong, man. In fact, it's not hard for me to believe that maybe the strongest September mid-latitude cyclone that I've seen so far while watching BC weather could be happening. This looks like something you'd see in November. Remember the storm that blew down all the trees in Stanley Park in Vancouver? That happened that was a November type storm. That's what this looks like to me, is a real series of November type storms. Well, this is now what's coming in November. Well, maybe it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get worse. It could stay consistent. Maybe it'll get a little worse. I don't know. What does it bring for November? Certainly is not looking like we're getting off the hook this winter. It certainly is looking like we're going to get precipitation coming big time, right? We're going to get a lot of precipitation, it seems like, this winter. We're going to have a La Nina winter. I think the La Nina predictions seem to be showing themselves early enough. And I think even I could argue that really the beginning of the pattern started at the very end of July, when we had that big weather change out of the very hot and dry. And then suddenly we started coming into this sort of roly-poly pattern, or we're getting these sort of frontal systems out the Pacific that would take us for 5 to 10 days into some different weather. Then the weather would rebound in BC. And then, this has been going on now, I think, for, a month and almost 2 months. Now we're seeing this pattern deepening. So I think we're into it. I think La Nina is happening. I think big time snowfall this winter is going to happen in the BC mountains. So again, we can't guess exactly, but this is the beginning of the fall, and it's sure looking like fall big time. It's looking like fall's been going on for a while. I mean, the storm that's happening right now is nothing too crazy, but it seems to be part of a punch of 1, 2, 3, 4. So the big question is, how does that high pressure that's been blocking things and sending that conveyor belt to BC, how does its breakdown change things? Does that impact the forecast this next week? It's possible that we will see changes still. So, this isn't the Bible, right? This is forecast probabilities are looking pretty high for a track of multiple storms, and some of them getting stronger and stronger and stronger as it goes. It seems like we are heading into a pattern that's reasonable, and you heard it here first, and that's why, hey, please support what I'm doing. Join the Patreon, become a channel member. I don't have a minimum. You can give $1 a month. I got 38,000 people on Interior Weather and Wilderness Watches. If you all put $2 a year in, suddenly I can really focus on what I'm doing. I can continue to improve my gear, my tech gear. I can continue to spend money on better and better apps. Speaking of apps, let's have one last look at this. In the BC interior right now, a little bit of rain going on in the Prince George area. It has been sprinkling off and on, but it's not looking so bad right now here in Barkerville and Wells. We're finally getting a little bit of a break. People have been asking me about the CEO who resigned from Barkerville. Everyone in town's very, very happy that she has. People are asking me if that's going to change my status, if I will be allowed back into Barkerville now. And conceivably, I won't be making war on the next CEO because they won't be near as bad as the one we just had. So at some point, we'll issue a bit of a statement what I think about all this and the treatment of myself and other locals in Wells at the hands of Barkerville during Kate Cox's tenure. And if she doesn't like it, she can deal with it, because these are the things that actually happen and how people feel. And you can't legislate people to not feel screwed over when they're screwed over. It's still very dry in the southern interior today, so looking nice. But here I am, Joey, only Caribbean weather dude. I was 4 days ahead of the Weather Network calling for an atmospheric river. I'm not. I don't have any producers, or they have reasons. I'm sure many of their forecasters looked out and said, "Hey, it looks like atmospheric river's coming." Yeah, okay. Well, we'll schedule that for Friday. We'll try to have our best details by then. And we have an order. We got different stories this week we're covering, and it's okay. I get it. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm better than their meteorologists, no. But I think that there's a bureaucratic thing that happens when you have a large network, that when you're just one guy who says whatever the heck he wants to say, I say it when I see it, I call it when I feel it. When the evidence is there, I will say what I think is going to happen. I don't have any producers. I don't have any bosses. I don't have to run it past anybody. That's what you get here at Caribbean Weather Dude YouTube channel. So, you spend $5 a month on an app for your phone, instead maybe throw $2 a month to Joey Only here and help keep the channel going. Help me take this to the next level. The podcast is going good. We're now on multiple platforms. Rogers Television wants to put us on more channels, but again, that's not a pay gig. I've got 68 episodes on Rogers Television so far. We'd have made a cent for it, right? So I need your support to keep being able to do this. Okay, I think that's all I got for today, everybody. Thanks so much. Hit like, share, subscribe. That's the thing you can do for free. Okay, bye now.